inspectors with daily face-to-face contact with boaters, you are the face of Colorado Parks and Wildlife, as well as the agency or employer that you represent. As such, you are expected to maintain a high level of professionalism at all times. The inspector role is to perform inspections and decontaminations and to prevent the spread of aquatic invasive species on recreational watercraft and to educate the public. Inspections, decontaminations, and education. Regardless of who you work for, you are an authorized agent of Colorado Parks and Wildlife when certified to perform inspections. As such, you are expected to always act professionally and follow state procedures. Wear your assigned uniform and keep a clean appearance. Remain polite and courteous, even in difficult situations. Never remove equipment from the workplace or use it for anything other than intended. Please show up to scheduled shifts on time or early and are ready to work. Use of alcohol or drugs, including marijuana, will not be tolerated in the workplace. Do not bring any pets to work with you or leave them in your car. Refer to your employee manual list for a complete list. There are many things that inspectors do not do. These include, unless otherwise instructed by your supervisor, law enforcement, campground management, search and rescue, fish licensing or area enforcement, posting signage, boater safety checks, boat registration checks, bathroom cleaning, fee collections, and so on. Things that are not allowed in the workplace. Pets in the workplace or at the inspection station. There is no sleeping on the job. Leaving the ramp unattended. Drugs or alcohol at work. Violence in the workplace. Smoking while boaters or visitors are present. And concealed weapons even with a permit. Please take good care of our equipment and return it at the end of the season. Notify your supervisor if something breaks or goes missing. Be sure to report broken or missing equipment as soon as possible. Do not remove equipment from the site. Do not use state equipment for any purpose other than what it was intended for by your employer. We are not allowed to charge for inspection or decontamination. We are not allowed to accept cash tips. Please do not attempt to sell our equipment and be sure to return all equipment at the end of the season. Uniforms are provided for Parks and Wildlife. This includes a safety vest, which you must wear. Please do not alter your uniforms in any way. You are expected to wear it daily. Other required uniform items include dark blue pants or shorts if allowed at your location, long pants while doing decontaminations, closed-toed shoes, eye protection. It is also a good idea to use sunscreen. Recall the basic propulsion systems. Trolling motors can be electric or gasoline and are used for moving slowly and quietly through the water. Outboard motors are attached to the transom of the boat and are housed entirely outside of the boat. Inboard, outboard, or IO engines have the lower unit outside of the boat while the engine is housed inside the boat. Inboard engines have the entire engine located inside the boat with only the prop and prop shaft support external to the boat. Jet engines intake water under the boat, which is then forced through an impeller and out of the jet that steers and powers the watercraft. The state of Colorado has defined 3 categories of boats. Regulation exempt boats do not need to be inspected unless they launch from a trailer or have a gasoline or diesel motor. Simple boats need to be inspected. Complex boats need to be inspected. For more than a decade, Colorado Parks and Wildlife has maintained a list of exempt vessels in regulation number 800.K. While this method of exempting vessels was very successful, it was not without challenges. As a result of rapidly evolving watercraft technologies, New boat types were routinely being added to the list while other similar vessels were not. Maintaining and interpreting this exempt list proved challenging for watercraft owners, authorized agents, and law enforcement personnel. To better address this issue, Colorado Parks and Wildlife revised its regulations to move away from this ever-growing list of exempt vessels and instead utilize criteria that will determine whether or not a vessel is exempt. The Aquatic Nuisance Species Program feels this approach will allow us to better be consistent and better prepared to deal with new watercraft technologies that enter the market in the coming years. So what are those criteria that make a vessel exempt? Starting in the 2022 season, all vessels that are both hand-launched and human-powered are exempt from mandatory inspections. This is a significant change from previous years. Remember that not all hand-launched boats are exempt, only those that are hand-launched and human-powered. Exempt boats will lose that exemption if they launch from a trailer or if a motor or engine is added. These will need to be thoroughly inspected just like you would any other watercraft. Remember, the more complex the watercraft, the greater ability to carry water, such as in ballasts. The risk will, of course, increase. As you can see from the table, houseboats, cabin cruisers, ski boats, and wakeboard boats with ballast tanks pose a high biological risk. Large open boats, sailboats, ski boats, along with wakeboard boats with no ballast tanks, and personal watercraft are a medium to high biological risk. Simple boats, such as having an open hull, a single motor, and no interior compartments, are a low biological risk. And finally, exempt watercraft that are hand-launched and human-powered carry a very low biological risk. There is a special consideration concerning the inspection process for sea strainers. Sea strainers are intended to keep solids from entering the internal pumps, such as engine and ballast pumps. They have the potential to inadvertently strain mussels from the water and trap them in the mesh strainer. Inspectors should ask boat owners if their vessel has any sea strainers on board and request that they open them for inspection. All right, let's get into the fun stuff, inspections. There are 4 different types of WIDS. That's Watercraft Inspection Decontamination Station. The first is the negative prevention waters, which are waters that have never had a verified detection of any aquatic nuisance species. The second is other aquatic nuisance species positive waters, which are waters that have a verified presence of an ANS listed in Chapter 8 regulations other than zebra or quagga mussels. The third WID is a ZQM containment water. These waters have had a verified zebra or quagga mussel detection. The fourth and final WID type is off-water WIDs. These locations are authorized inspection sites that are not at a lake or reservoir. For instance, offices, marine dealers, and now the roadside port of entry inspections. All boats should be clean, drained, and dry in between launches. This means no water, no mud, no mussels, and no plants. If boats are not moving any of these, we have significantly reduced, if not eliminated, the risk of carrying invasive species on recreational watercraft. Remember to educate every boater to clean, drain, and dry. Do not assume they know. As an inspector, there will be times where there may be a lot of vehicle and boater traffic, inclement weather, and special machinery and equipment when you are performing decontaminations. Safety for yourself and the public is always the #1 priority. It is also of the utmost importance to educate the public about invasive species and how they can stop the spread of ANS by keeping their gear and boats clean, drain, dry. Performing inspections and identifying which watercraft pose the highest risk is also very important to keep WIDs running efficiently and smoothly. Finally, draining water and decontamination may be required to eliminate the risk of ANS. While it may be easy to assume that most boaters know about ANS and the WID program, it is important to take time to ask them and explain the process. There may be instances in which you have returning boaters that you, the inspector, know very well. It is still important to remind every boater to clean, drain, dry their boat and equipment after use. The goal is to have the boater to be able to inspect and drain their own boat when launching or leaving waters without inspection stations. It is important to have the proper equipment available to be able to do good inspections and decontaminations. Some of the tools you should have at your site include the data collectors or tablets, an LED flashlight, an inspection mirror, wire cutters, magnifiers, brochures and educational items, writing utensils, uniform and safety vest, and a sample collection kit. These should be provided by your employer. The top 3 items will be graded in the quality assurance evaluation, that is your tablet or WID activity log, a flashlight, and mirrors. The others you should have at the station and use as needed. Do not remove wire with your hands. You must use wire cutters to avoid lacerations from the wire. There are 3 types of inspections: entrance inspections, exit inspections, and off-water inspections. We will go into more detail with what these inspections are a little bit later in this presentation. While performing inspections, you will be recording information such as date and time, boat and trailer registration, risk factors, and types of procedures performed. Most authorized locations record this information in an electronic data collector that allows for instant uploading of data into a CPW database. This was developed by an inspector and piloted from 2009 to 2011. This cuts down on paper waste and saves time and money from having employees type in the data by hand. In 2012, the ANS utility data collection system was deployed successfully statewide. By collecting boat inspection records electronically and not on paper logs, as was the method at most sites, the ANS program anticipated saving money currently being spent on data entry technicians to type that data into a database and gain great efficiencies on busy boat ramps. In 2014, the ANS program deployed ANS Mobile. This mobile data collection is usable on Android and iOS devices and has greatly expanded the range in which we are able to employ this mobile data collection system. The system is now being used in Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, Oregon, Washington, Montana, Nebraska, Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, Lake Tahoe, Arizona, and Nevada. We anticipate this application being used by more and more states and jurisdictions over the next couple of years. All sites in Colorado are now utilizing the WID mobile application as their primary form of data collection. This WID log form should only be used as backup in the case of the data collector at your site not working. Colorado uses a seal and receipt system so that a boater can show proof of prior inspection. The state uses a green seal that locks the boat to the trailer. This assures the inspector that the boat has not launched since the seal was last applied. This green seal, accompanied by a receipt, helps communicate across jurisdictions by documenting what level of inspection or decontamination was previously performed. It also allows authorized locations that are not located at a lake or reservoir to show proof of inspection. Be sure to attach the seal between the eye bolt and a hard welded part of the trailer so that it can't be removed and put back without breaking. Boats will be sealed with a matching receipt if one of the following occurs: if it leaves prevention reservoirs and passes an exit inspection or decontamination, if it leaves a containment reservoir and passes an exit inspection or decontamination, or if it comes to an off-water WID station at an authorized office or business and passes either an inspection or decontamination. We have 2 different types of receipts that you will commonly see. First, white receipts are issued at sites that are considered negative for aquatic nuisance species. And second, the blue receipts are issued at sites that are considered positive for aquatic nuisance species. Green seals must be accompanied by a matching receipt. Green seals from prevention reservoirs will be accompanied again by a white receipt. All the information in boxes should be filled out so that a boater cannot tamper with the receipt. There is a note section to fill in any important information for the next inspector. For example, if the boat had a dead battery and the motor couldn't be lowered. Boats that were sealed leaving a containment reservoir will be accompanied by a blue receipt. The boater will be asked if they are returning to that same reservoir or if they plan on launching the boat elsewhere. This is important information to determine if the boat will need to be decontaminated. In 2023, the Aquatic Nuisance Species Program tested out new wireless printers to generate receipts. These printers will print a receipt after an off-water or exit inspection is entered into the data collector. These receipts are easy to read and have a QR code at the bottom that could be scanned using the tablet at the boater's next seal removal. Internet or Wi-Fi is not required to be able to scan a receipt. For now, these tablets will be tested at locations that volunteer to test out these in a field setting. They may be used at any location, including blue receipt locations, but they cannot be printed in color, so please read all receipts carefully. As always, they will have a lake name and other important information, including what type of aquatic nuisance species is at that lake printed on the receipt. You may see these receipts anywhere in the state as we test them. They are valid, and you can use the WidMobile scan inspection feature to scan the QR code and populate the boater information. And this is what that receipt will look like. The program is now using new software that also allows a link to a digital copy of the receipt to be texted or emailed to the boater, eliminating the use of paper entirely. At the end of the inspection, before you upload, you can enter the boater's phone number or email into a designated box on the screen to send them a text with their full receipt. No personal information is stored on the tablets, so this will be done manually with each outgoing inspection. The next inspector can then scan their QR code using the tablet at the next seal removal or entrance inspection. The availability of receipt texting may be limited as the program tests the software, so check with your site supervisor about whether this will be featured at your lake. When you scan the barcode, all it will do is populate the first page of the inspection WidMobile. When explaining green seals to the public, there are a few things to keep in mind. Green does not mean that boaters can launch without being inspected. A green seal and receipt together is proof that the boater has been inspected and not launched since then. Boaters still need to stop at the inspection station to have their seal and receipt verified. In some cases, the inspector may need to inspect the boat again if they find water or if the boat is not clean. However, keeping a clean, drain, dry boat will help boaters get on the water faster. This is a flowchart to demonstrate different scenarios regarding seal removals and the best course of action for each possibility. This is the simplest and most typical situation to occur. The boater has both a green seal that has not been tampered with and a receipt to match. They are also either returning to the same water or have received a decontamination. You can proceed to ask about live aquatic bait, thank the boater, and allow launch. In this situation, the boater does have an acceptable green seal. However, they do not have a receipt to match. If the seal indicates that they were last at the same location or a negative water body, you can proceed to ask about live aquatic bait, thank the boater, and allow them to launch. Encourage the boater to remember the receipts in the future. Here we have a similar situation where the boater has a green seal, but again, no receipt. This time, the receipt shows that the boater is not returning to the same water body and is not coming from a negative water. In this case, you must determine if the seal is from a body of water that has the same exact ANS contained in the water body that they wish to launch. If this is the case, you can ask about bait, thank the boater, and allow them to launch. Remind the boater that it is important to keep track of their receipts. Now we see a situation where the boat has a green seal, lacks a receipt. The seal indicates that it is not a returning boat and is not coming from a water body with the same aquatic nuisance species as the body of water in which they want to launch. In this case, the boat will need to be re-inspected. You must check for any standing water, including unverifiable water and ballast. Does it have an inboard or an IO engine? If the boat has any standing water or unverifiable water, it must receive a standing water decon. Otherwise, if the boat is clean, drain, dry, you can ask about live aquatic bait, thank the boater, and allow them to launch. Here is another commonly encountered situation. The boat has an acceptable green seal and receipt. However, they are not returning to the same location and have not received a decontamination. If the receipt is white, this indicates that the boat has launched from a negative water body and they can proceed to launch. Remember to always verify location on the receipt, as the new QR code receipts are also white. When in doubt, verify with the tablet. However, if the boat has a seal with a blue receipt, you must determine if this boat is coming from a water with the same ANS as the water body in which they are launching. If so, you can ask about live aquatic bait, thank the boater, and allow them to launch. If the boat has a valid seal and blue receipt, but the body of water they are coming from does not have the same aquatic nuisance species as the body of water they want to launch in, they must be re-inspected for standing water. If the boat has any standing water or any unverifiable water, such as ballast, an inboard engine, or an IO engine, they must receive a standing water decon. Otherwise, if the boat is clean, drain, dry, you can ask about live aquatic bait, thank the boater, and allow launch. Here again is the flow chart in its entirety. And this is a flow chart to demonstrate different scenarios regarding seal removals and the best course of action for each possibility again. You may see other colored seals from other states. There is a table in the training manual for a more complete list of seal colors and locations. If the boat arrives with a different colored seal, it must go through an inspection as though it had no seal. We do not currently accept any out-of-state inspections or decontaminations. Entrance inspections are performed prior to a boat launching on the water and is the same procedure whether you are working at a containment or prevention reservoir. Each inspection varies in time depending on the type and complexity of the boat. You will use the paper WID log or the data collector for every inspection. Entrance inspections require you assess the risk of that watercraft and it requires you to look and feel for aquatic nuisance species. In 2020, the Western Regional Panel on Aquatic Nuisance Species Decontamination Think Tank Committee revised the regional watercraft inspection and decontamination procedures. As a result, Colorado Parks and Wildlife has also revised our inspection procedures to be more in alignment with other Western states. Now let's go over the inspection process step by step. Number one, safety is the number one priority. Ensure public safety by asking the boater to put their car in park, set the parking brake, turn off the ignition, and step out of the vehicle to assist with the inspection process. Introduce yourself and provide a brief introduction into the inspection process and the reason you are performing the inspection. Inform the boater that you are looking for zebra and quagga mussels or other invasive plants and animals. Provide the boater with a brochure and remember to mention clean, drain, dry. Perform your initial assessment and record in your data collector if the boat is launching or exiting. the boat type, the boat registration, including the state letters, the trailer license plate, again, including the state letters, and the propulsion type. Now that we've recorded the initial information, you need to determine if the watercraft is a high or low risk. In other words, what is the risk of this particular boat in carrying aquatic nuisance species? Low-risk boats are defined as those with having a green seal and a matching receipt that's returning to the same location, having a green seal and a matching receipt from a negative location, or having a green seal and matching blue receipt from a location that has the same aquatic nuisance species as the inspection location that you are at. Perform a seal removal for low-risk boats. Be sure to verify the seal and receipt match and that the seal has not been tampered with. Don't forget to ask about live aquatic bait. High-risk boats are defined as those with they do not have a seal or matching receipt. They have a seal that has been tampered with. They have a seal that is not from Colorado. They have a seal and matching blue receipt from a location with a different aquatic nuisance species. High-risk boats will require a full inspection to ensure they are not carrying aquatic nuisance species. Remember to always ask about live aquatic bait. For high-risk boats, you will need to determine their recent boating history. There are 2 questions you should ask. Has the boat launched out of the state in the last 30 days? If so, where? Where has the boat launched in the last 30 days? Make sure you're asking these as 2 separate questions. Step 5 is perform the visual and tactile inspection. Remember, this is the HEAD acronym. H is inspect the entire hull and trailer and have the boater pull the bilge plug. E for engine, inspect the engine or motor and transom and carefully with a flashlight. Always have the lower unit lowered to ensure it is drained. A, inspect the anchor and other equipment. D, drain, inspect interior compartments and drain all standing water from compartments and bilge. When inspecting the hull and trailer, be sure to look for and feel for aquatic nuisance species. Inspect through-hole fittings, trailer bunks, tire wells, and lights. Check the bilge plugs see if they are installed and if there's any standing water in the bilge. Be sure to remove any plant fragments that may be present. Physically and visually inspect the bilge area. Use a flashlight. If applicable, have the boater activate the bilge pump. If the watercraft has an inboard engine, be certain to carefully inspect the prop shaft, support, and rudder. Inspect any intakes for ballast, engines, or other interior systems or compartments. And remember, if you see through-hole intakes and discharge ports, they will be a good indicator that there's a more complicated system on board. When inspecting the engine and motor, first inspect the drive unit and gimbal while the engine is up or in trailer mode. Have the boater lower the outboard or lower unit to ensure that it is drained. Check the transom and gimbal areas closely with a flashlight. These are areas that mussels prefer to attach. Once you're done inspecting the engine or motor, ask the boater to raise the drive unit to avoid damage during transport. Inspectors should ask to see the anchor and any other equipment that could have come in contact with the water. Visually inspect for water, mud, plants, or other aquatic nuisance species and ensure all equipment is clean and dry. Compartments need to be inspected and drained or decontaminated if they contain water. Always ask permission to board the vessel and follow behind the boater to prevent injury. The boater must physically open compartments for the inspector to check for water. If the watercraft is standing water in the bait well or in any other container, the inspector should work with the boater to remove standing water from the watercraft using a pump, sponge, or towel. If the watercraft cannot be drained, it should be decontaminated. If the watercraft is a ballast system, inspect all visible components for standing water and request that the operator activate all associated discharge pumps and open any water restricting gates for the ballast system. If the watercraft has an inboard or IO engine, inspect the engine compartment and its bilge. Have the operator run the bilge pump if applicable. These engines do not fully drain and will require standing water decon, just like the ballast, before launching. If the watercraft has any sea strainers or water filtration devices, request that they be removed by the boat owner. Inspect all sea strainers once removed from the watercraft. Have the boat operator reinstall the strainers following inspection. And now for the closeout. At the end of the inspection, be sure to remind the boater to replace the bilge plug prior to launch. Ensure that the motor has been raised to avoid damage during transport. Encourage the boater to return for an exit inspection. Ensure all inspectors have completed inspection and that nothing was found. Provide the boater with any additional educational materials. Thank the boater. Yell, stand clear to ensure safety of staff and public. Record the inspection using a data collector. Mussels prefer to settle on rough areas or right-angled locations. They are light sensitive and prefer dark colors. They will be located below the waterline or in compartments that hold water, as they cannot survive long-term out of the water. Your focus should be on areas like these when conducting inspections. Exit inspections are performed when the boat is leaving the reservoir. It continues to use the HEAD acronym. This is the minimum required to receive a green seal and receipt when leaving a prevention reservoir, and provides an opportunity to educate the boaters, ensure vessel, hull, and anchor are clean, ensure the vessel is drained, encourage additional cleaning and drying. Remind the boater to leave the bilge plug out during transport to ensure more drainage from the bilge and to dry equipment at home. If at any point aquatic nuisance species is found, do a high-risk inspection and decontaminate. Also be sure to verify the accuracy of your data entry and thank the boater for their time and cooperation. It is mandatory that boats leaving another containment water receive an inspection per regulation. Decontaminations will not be required at the source water unless an aquatic nuisance species is found or suspected. Blue receipts will only be valid for pre-inspection at the same site in which they were issued. Off-water inspections are primarily performed at office and business locations that can be performed anywhere. These inspections are intended for boaters that want a seal but are not intending to launch at your water body. The off-water inspection procedure is a hybrid of the entrance and exit inspections, where a full entrance inspection is performed with a seal and receipt issued at the conclusion of the inspection. Boats carrying standing water pose a huge biological risk of transporting aquatic nuisance species. Mussel larvae, juveniles, pathogens, or plant seeds or fragments can be carried in this water. This is why all boats should be drained out in between launches or decontaminated. The only exception to this rule is if a boat with ballast tanks, IOs, or an inboard engine has been drained to the best of your ability, is issued a green seal and receipt, and is launching at another prevention water. In this course, we talk about two different types of water: verifiable and unverifiable. Verifiable water is water in compartments that you can see, feel, or visually inspect, such as in wells or billages. This is most of the water on most of the boats that you will encounter. The other is unverifiable water. This is the water in compartments such as ballast, IOs, and inboard engines that you cannot see, feel, or visually inspect. You do not know where it is from. Here are the standing water protocols. If the watercraft has been in positive, infested, or unknown waters and was not decontaminated upon exit, and has any standing water, it is mandatory to send the watercraft to decontamination. Watercraft that are from unknown sources or from prevention waters must be clean, drained, and dry. Sponge, pump, or towel out standing water or decontaminate prior to allowing launch. Boats with unverifiable water, such as ballast, inboards, and IOs. Boats with no green seal in receipt will get a standing water decontamination. Boats with a green seal in receipt that are returning to the same location do not need decontamination. Boats with a green seal in receipt moving between Colorado prevention waters must be fully pumped out and are no longer require decontamination. Educate all ballast boaters to get green seals and receipts when exiting reservoirs. When inspecting jet engines, including personal watercraft or PWCs, it is an important step to verify the presence or absence of standing water by instructing the operator to burp the engine. If a jet boat or PWC is entering your water with no seal, or a seal from a location that has invasive species that your lake does not, this will decide whether this vessel requires a decontamination. Instruct the operator to start the engine and rev it 2 or 3 times. If water is discharged, this indicates standing water and will require a decon. If no water is discharged, the jet is clean, drained, and dry, and will not trigger a standing water decontamination. Upon exit, all PWCs and jets should perform the same burping to discharge any standing water, even if you're working at a clean body of water. Our goal is for watercraft to bring no water in and no water out. Most jet engines can be run for up to 10 seconds out of water, and this will not hurt the jet engine. Now let's review live aquatic bait. Regulation number 803M states that if a vessel or other floating device contains bait in water, then the owner or operator will be required to produce a receipt for the bait from a Colorado bait dealer with a date that is clearly printed on the receipt and the date is no more than 7 days previous. Per the Colorado fishing brochure, use or possession of live fish as bait is prohibited east of the Continental Divide above 7,000 feet. Use or possession of live fish as bait is prohibited west of the Continental Divide except at Navajo Reservoir. Live fish as bait is not allowed to be transported unless it's purchased from an authorized Colorado dealer and has a receipt. Any bait fish being caught in the wild must be used on the same body of water in which it was caught and is not allowed to be transported to a different water or stored for later use. This does not apply to the Arkansas River below Pueblo and the 6 counties included therein, which includes John Martin State Park. As a reminder, the live transport of crayfish is prohibited west of the Continental Divide and from Sanchez Reservoir. In those areas, crayfish must be killed by removing the head from the thorax and taken into possession immediately or returned to the water from which they were taken. Long story short, you need to know the rules for live aquatic bait at your site. If they're not clear, please consult with your supervisor. Before and after every launch, you must ask the boater if they have any live aquatic bait on board. This is because bait water can harbor mussel veligers or diseases like whirling disease or viral hemorrhagic septicemia, 2 deadly fish diseases. Also, bait fish itself could be an invasive species such as rusty crayfish or goldfish. If a boater has live aquatic bait, you must ask for a valid Colorado receipt. If they have a valid receipt dated within 7 days, allow the boater to launch with the bait as is. If the boater produces a valid receipt that is more than 7 days old, then you must perform a bait treatment, which will be discussed in the decon module. If they do not have a receipt for the bait in question, you must do a bait treatment of the water and the boater must dispose of the bait and the garbage away from the water body. Out-of-state bait is never allowed. If the boater has bait from out of the state, you must decontaminate the container and the boater must dispose of the bait and the garbage away from the water body. Now let's talk a little bit about reporting. If you find or you think you have found a mussel boat, you must call your immediate supervisor to notify them. They will then notify the state invasive species coordinator. Specimens should be collected and sent to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife A&S program office lab within 24 hours of collecting the specimen. We will go into more detail when we cover decontamination. If you find zebra quagga mussels or other ANS, do not allow the boater to leave with mussels or other ANS attached to the vessel. You must report, document, collect, and decontaminate. Call law enforcement if you need assistance. Last but not least, pre-inspection. Pre-inspection is a state park-specific program to allow accessible access outside of dedicated inspection hours. The way pre-inspection works is, if the ANS inspection station is open, boaters must get inspected at the ANS inspection station. If the ANS inspection station is not open, boats must show proof of inspection at the pre-inspection. Boaters cut off their own seal and place that seal and receipt in the drop box and fill out the log. Blue receipts are not allowed for pre-inspection unless they're returning to the same location. Park rangers and ANS inspectors compare boats on the lake and trailers in the parking lot with the contents of the drop box and logs. Discrepancies are investigated. Violators can be intercepted on the water or as they come off the water and can be cited. We must be vigilant with pre-inspection. It is an important part of our ANS program. Agents should check the box at night and at every morning. Agents should also notify law enforcement if any violations are discovered. This concludes Module 3 on inspection. Please take the Module 3 quiz and proceed to Module 4.